Alex Mercer never believed in ghosts, and Taylor Reid never feared the dark until the night they stumbled across a file that shouldn't exist. A single click was all it took, and suddenly their screens weren't showing code, they were showing them. Watching, learning, waiting. What started as curiosity quickly became terror, and before either of them could escape, the laptop had already made its first move. They didn't know it yet, but whatever they had unleashed didn't just exist online, it existed in their lives. And it was hungry. I thought I was careful. I thought I knew exactly what I was doing. But that night, staring at the glow of my laptop, I realized just how wrong I had been. It started with curiosity, a simple click on a link buried in a deep hacker forum. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted to see how far the code could reach, how far the network could stretch. I thought it was harmless, a challenge, a puzzle meant for someone like me. The download was almost too fast. One moment I was hovering over the file, the next it appeared on my desktop, a small, unassuming program named Welcome.exe. My gut told me not to open it. Something in me screamed to delete it immediately, but excitement and arrogance drowned out the warning. I doubled. Immediately, my screen flickered, lines of code cascaded down like liquid fire, faster than I could comprehend. The light in my room dimmed and flickered, as if the laptop itself had pulled the energy from the walls. My hands froze over the keyboard, a cold prickle ran down my spine, a feeling that something unseen was watching me, judging me. I wanted to shut it off, but my fingers refused to obey. Then the message appeared. Jagged, uneven letters that seemed to tremble as they formed on the screen. I see you. I leaped back. My chair tipped, scraping against the floor, but I didn't care. My room felt smaller, like the walls themselves were closing in. I reached for the power cord, yanking it from the wall. The laptop went dark. Silence returned, but the feeling didn't leave. A presence lingered, unseen yet impossible to ignore. It pressed against the back of my neck, whispering in a language I couldn't hear but somehow understood. I tried to convince myself it was just a sophisticated prank, maybe a virus designed to scare people like me, but my instincts screamed differently. My apartment felt wrong. The shadows that usually faded into corners now lingered, thick and heavy, stretching longer than they should. The air was cold, unnaturally cold, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. Sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flickering lines of code. The letters haunted me. I could feel them moving across my eyelids even when they weren't there. In my dreams, the screen glowed brighter than my ceiling light, illuminating shapes that didn't belong. Shapes with long arms and hollow eyes that pressed closer and closer. And always the message repeated, echoing in my mind. I see you, I see you, I see you. The next morning I tried to shake it off, convincing myself that it had been a trick of fatigue, a hallucination caused by staring at the screen too long. But then I noticed something. My desktop had changed. The Welcome.exe file was gone, replaced by a new icon, this one unlabeled. Hesitation filled me, but curiosity, a dangerous, relentless curiosity, pulled me toward it. I didn't touch it, not yet, but it stared back at me, an unspoken command lurking in its small, blank square. Throughout the day I felt eyes on me, not the kind that come from humans, but something sharper, deeper, like a predator studying its prey. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. A single message appeared. You can't hide. I dropped the phone. My hand shook. Every mirror, every reflective surface seemed to ripple, showing glimpses of movement behind me when no one was there. My reflection looked wrong, paler, stretched in places. My eyes too large, too alert, mirroring a fear I didn't recognize in myself. By nightfall, I was trembling uncontrollably. I wanted to destroy the laptop, throw it into the street, anything to end it. But a part of me, the part that had started this all, the part that loved the thrill of danger, kept me rooted. I opened it again, slowly, knowing I shouldn't. The screen flared to life on its own. The words appeared instantly. I'm watching. I couldn't look away. The letters moved, slithering across the screen like living shadows. My webcam, which I had long covered, reflected a faint glint. I had no idea if it was just the light or if something was on the other side, observing me. My breath came fast and shallow. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the laptop was expanding, stretching the space around me to fit its presence. And then I saw it, or I thought I did. A shadow, just a flicker behind my chair, curling across the floor like a liquid darkness. It moved too quickly to be my imagination, too deliberate to be coincidence. My heart slammed in my chest. My hands were numb, yet somehow I reached toward the laptop. The screen flickered one last time before going completely black, leaving me staring into a darkness that wasn't just absence of light, it felt alive. That night, I didn't sleep. And when I finally drifted into a restless slumber, I could still feel it, the cold, watching presence waiting for me to open my eyes again. The next day I tried to convince myself it had been a nightmare, a combination of too much screen time and paranoia. But the moment my eyes opened I realized nothing had ended. The apartment felt heavier, the air thick with something I couldn't name. Even the sunlight streaming through the windows seemed wrong, as though it was filtered through a lens that made shadows sharper, darker. My phone buzzed on the table. I didn't recognize the number, and I didn't want to. Against my better judgment I looked. A single message stared at me in black, jagged letters. Why did you open it? My hands went cold. I dropped the phone, but the message remained, burned into my mind. I could feel it, echoing in the empty corners of my apartment. My stomach twisted, a cold weight settling deep inside. I wanted to leave, to run somewhere, anywhere that wasn't this apartment. But a strange compulsion kept me rooted. Something inside me wanted to see, to understand, to face whatever was reaching out through that screen. I approached my laptop slowly, every step measured, every breath shallow. As I drew near, the screen flared to life on its own, brighter than I remembered. The letters had changed. They were no longer just words, they had become questions, twisted and malformed. Alone. The word pulsed on the screen as if it were alive, breathing, waiting for my reaction. I froze, my body rigid with fear. My hands hovered over the keyboard. A bead of sweat slid down my temple, cold and insistent. That's when I noticed my webcam lens glinting faintly in the reflection of the screen. I had covered it months ago. No one could see me, I had been sure. But now, something had turned it on. I didn't dare look at the reflection of myself in the darkened window across the room. Something told me I wouldn't like what I saw. Instead, I stared at the laptop, waiting, paralyzed, feeling the presence of something beyond the screen. It wasn't just watching, it was waiting, patient, like a predator circling its prey. I tried to distract myself. I shut the laptop, unplugged it, even moved it across the room. The tension in the apartment did not lift. Shadows stretched in impossible ways across the walls, flickering at angles that shouldn't exist. Every mirror, every glossy surface reflected movement behind me when I turned my head. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt heavy, unresponsive, as if they belonged to someone else. By evening, the apartment felt suffocating. I could hear faint sounds, soft, almost imperceptible clicks, like typing, but no one was there. My eyes darted from corner to corner, seeking the source. I told myself it was stress, paranoia, the residual effect of staring at that screen too long. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Something was inside my home, inside my life, something that had followed me from the screen. Then, without warning, my laptop opened again. The words on the screen were no longer just letters. They had become images, screenshots, photos of my apartment, of my bed, my kitchen, my own face, asleep or unaware, captured from angles I didn't recognize. I hadn't installed cameras. I had no idea how it was possible. And yet, there they were, each photo punctuated by a shadow lurking behind me. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The air grew colder still, the shadows denser, almost crawling along the walls. I could feel its gaze, heavy and relentless, pressing into my skull. It wasn't just watching, it was inside my mind. I wanted to leave, I wanted to escape, but every exit seemed blocked by an invisible force. The hallway stretched unnaturally, shadows pooling at the far corners. The door to my apartment creaked ever so slightly, as though testing my resolve. My laptop screen flickered once more, and the words appeared again. You cannot hide. I dropped to my knees, shaking, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. A static whisper filled the apartment, low and harsh, like the sound of 1,000 voices trying to speak at once. I could feel it crawling over my skin, brushing against my neck, slipping down my spine. It wasn't just the presence of a program or a virus, it was something alive, something patient, something that had learned to mimic my fears and use them against me. And then I saw it, just for a second, reflected in the black screen of the laptop. A figure crouched in the corner of the room, impossibly tall, impossibly thin, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I blinked, and it was gone. But the impression remained, the certainty that it had never left, that it had always been there, and that I was utterly alone. By the time I collapsed onto the floor, trembling and gasping for air, the laptop sat before me, still open, still glowing. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was a single, jagged line of text crawling across the screen, whispering a promise I couldn't escape. I'm coming closer. By the third night, I had stopped trying to convince myself it was just a virus. I knew, with a certainty that twisted my stomach, that something had found a way inside my life. Every step I took, every corner I turned, felt monitored. My apartment, once familiar, had become a labyrinth of shadows and silent threats. The air itself seemed heavier, as if it had weight, pressing down on me. Even the furniture felt wrong, slightly off kilter, as if the room had subtly shifted when I wasn't looking. I tried to barricade myself, unplugging every device, tossing my phone into a drawer, even covering the laptop with a thick blanket. But no matter what I did, it found me. The air would hum faintly, a high-pitched static that made my teeth ache. And then I would see it, just out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement, a shadow where none should be. My mind screamed that I was imagining it, but the feeling of being watched was too tangible, too real. Sleep had become a distant memory. My dreams were filled with screens glowing brighter than the sun, lines of code that slithered like snakes, shapes that twisted and writhed, forming faces I did not recognize, yet seemed to know me intimately. I would wake gasping, my body drenched in sweat, only to hear the faintest sound of typing, soft and deliberate, coming from somewhere in the apartment. My own hands would twitch toward the phantom keyboard. One evening I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the blacked-out laptop. A part of me wanted to destroy it entirely, to smash it into pieces and burn what remained. But another part, the part that had led me into this nightmare, compelled me to see, to understand, to confront whatever had crossed the line between digital and physical. I opened it. The screen flared to life instantly. This time the letters were no longer words, they were symbols, twisting, incomprehensible sigils that moved like living things across the screen. I had no idea what they meant, but I knew they were meant for me. My stomach churned with the certainty that understanding them would cost me something, though I couldn't say what. Then I noticed the first image, a screenshot of my bedroom from above, as though someone or something was watching from the ceiling. My breath caught. I hadn't installed cameras. No one had been in my apartment. And yet, there it was, the angle perfect, the shadow thin, impossible, lurking at the far side of the room. Every new screenshot brought more horror. My kitchen, my bathroom, my living room, my own face caught asleep, unaware, every image showing the same shadow always behind me. The shadow seemed to shift subtly, leaning closer, tilting its head in ways that no human could manage. Panic gripped me. I couldn't run, because no matter where I went, every image showed me, followed by that impossible presence. By now, my nerves had frayed entirely. I could hear it in the apartment, faint, but relentless, a soft, irregular tapping, like typing, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I wanted to leave, to escape, but the hallways of my apartment building seemed to stretch unnaturally. Doors led to places they shouldn't, and my own reflection in the windows no longer matched me. My eyes appeared larger, my skin paler, my body trembling, as if the presence inside the laptop had already begun to rewrite me. One night, I awoke to the unmistakable sound of my front door unlocking. My heart stopped. I hadn't touched it. No one was supposed to be there. My legs refused to move. I forced my gaze toward the laptop. It was open. A line of text had appeared across the screen, typed with jagged precision. Step closer, I couldn't scream. My throat was dry, tight, constricted by fear I had never known. The air grew colder, heavier. I could feel it leaning over me, waiting, patient, its presence filling the apartment like a thick fog. I couldn't tell where it ended and I began. Then I saw movement, subtle at first, near the edge of my vision. The shadow crouched, impossibly thin, impossibly tall, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I blinked and it was gone, but I knew it hadn't moved. It had only waited for me to see. My chest heaved, my pulse pounded in my ears. My mind screamed at me to destroy the laptop to end this. But as I reached for it, the letters shifted again. Touch me, and it's your end. I froze, my hand suspended inches from the keyboard. A soft, static whisper curled around my ears, a sound like breathing and electricity combined. It brushed against my neck, slid down my spine, cold and deliberate. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. I couldn't escape. The screen changed one final time that night. It displayed my reflection, not as I was, but as I would soon become, hollow-eyed, pale, trapped, a prisoner of something I could neither fight nor understand. And in that reflection, crouched just behind me, was the shadow, smiling in a way that no human face could, promising that this was only the beginning. I collapsed onto the floor, trembling uncontrollably, knowing with bone-deep certainty that my life was no longer my own. And as I stared at the glowing screen, I realized something even more horrifying. Whatever this was, it had learned to mimic my every fear, and I was utterly powerless to stop it. By the fourth night, the apartment had stopped feeling like my own. Every surface, every shadow, every whisper of air seemed alien, as if the space had been rewritten while I slept. I could no longer distinguish between reality and whatever had seeped out of the laptop. Even my reflection in the windows, which once simply mirrored me, now carried a subtle wrongness and emptiness in my eyes, a slight curl at the corners of my mouth that shouldn't have been there. Sleep had abandoned me completely. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the screens glowing brighter than any light should, codes slithering like snakes across them, symbols I could not read but somehow felt, shapes, twisted and grotesque, formed faces that whispered in voices I did not recognize. And always, the shadow was there, crouched, tall, patient, waiting for me to notice. I would wake shaking, drenched in sweat, only to hear faint typing, soft and deliberate, coming from somewhere in the apartment. I would see the glow of a screen I had not turned on, the keyboard pressing itself beneath invisible hands. I tried to leave. I stayed with friends, in hotels, anywhere far from my apartment, but every place had a laptop. Every screen showed my own apartment, and always, the shadow, watching, waiting, smiling. It was no longer just code or program. It had become a presence, following me, invading me, learning me. One evening, exhausted and trembling, I returned to my apartment. The door was locked, as always, yet the air inside felt heavier than any time before. My laptop sat on the desk, open, waiting. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to look at the screen, and there it was, a live feed of my own bedroom, filmed from an angle that defied explanation. I had no cameras, no devices capable of capturing this. And yet the image was perfect. My bed empty except for the shadows curling across the floor. I sank into a chair, hands trembling, eyes fixed on the screen. My reflection in the window behind me shifted, as though it had a mind of its own. The shadow crouched at the far side of the room, impossibly thin, impossibly tall, tilting its head in a way that made my stomach twist. I wanted to run, to leave, but my body refused to move. The presence pressed in on me, not from the screen, but from inside, like it had become part of my very being. I spent hours staring at the laptop, every click, every keystroke, every command mirrored by the shadow. I tried to close it, tried to destroy it, but the moment my hands touched the keyboard, the letters shifted. One by one they spelled out a message that froze my blood. I'm inside. I wanted to scream, to flee, but the apartment had become a cage. The hallway stretched impossibly long when I tried to leave, and doors that should have led outside now opened into darkness, endless black. Even my reflection had stopped moving with me. It lingered behind, smiling, watching, waiting. Then the screen changed again. My own life played back in real time, but with differences I could not have imagined. Actions I hadn't taken, movements I hadn't made, choices I hadn't decided upon all displayed on the glowing screen before me. And always, the shadow followed. Patient, crouched, just beyond reach, whispering in a voice I could feel but not hear. I realized then with growing terror, this wasn't just watching, it was shaping my life, rewriting me, learning my mind, learning my body. I wanted to fight. I wanted to break the laptop, burn it, destroy it utterly. But something inside me hesitated. I knew with cold certainty that to destroy it would provoke it, and that it would retaliate in ways I could not survive. Every instinct screamed to leave, to hide, to escape the presence that had rooted itself inside me. And yet, I could not move. And then, without warning, I woke in the middle of the night to a sound that froze my blood. My front door was unlocking itself, the old familiar creak of the lock echoing through the apartment. My laptop sat open on the desk, and now, the figure I had feared for weeks had begun to step from the screen itself. Its movements were fluid, unnatural, deliberate, crossing the impossible boundary between digital and real. My breath caught in my throat, my legs refused to move. The screen went black for a heartbeat, and then a single line of jagged letters appeared. You belong to me now. I froze, trembling, staring at the blank screen. The shadow leaned closer behind me, and I realized I could feel its cold breath on the back of my neck. I couldn't scream. I couldn't run. I could do nothing but sit there, powerless, as the presence filled every corner of the room, every corner of my mind. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't going to end. It wasn't just inside my apartment. It was inside me. The last thing I remembered before slipping into a restless, suffocating sleep was the glow of the laptop, brighter than the moon, pulsating as if alive, and the whisper of its promise curling around me like ice. Soon, we will be one. I thought I understood fear. I thought I had felt terror before, but nothing prepared me for the next night. I woke to darkness, the kind of darkness that pressed against your skin, thick and almost tangible. My apartment was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full of waiting, full of something watching. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe it was over. The laptop was closed, the lights were off. Maybe I had dreamed it all, but then I heard it. Not from the laptop, not from outside, from inside me. My own voice, or something mimicking it, whispering from the pit of my chest. You're mine now. I shot upright, my body trembling uncontrollably. The room felt smaller, the shadows deeper, and the air thicker. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, but my legs refused. My apartment had become a trap. The walls seemed to bend around me, corridors stretching where none should exist, doors leading to darkness I had never seen. I stumbled toward the laptop, my hands shaking. It was open, glowing faintly in the darkness, though I had not touched it. The screen displayed something impossible, my own reflection, but wrong. Hollow eyes stared back, a twisted imitation of me, a puppet my fear had shaped. Behind that reflection crouched the shadow, impossibly tall, impossibly thin, smiling in a way that no human face could. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. It drew me in, a magnet to the glow, to the presence that had grown inside me for weeks. Then the whispers came, low static-filled surrounding me, speaking all at once, yet nothing I could understand. The shadows moved independently, creeping along the walls, across the floor, curling around my legs like living smoke. My heart slammed against my ribcage. I realized, with a sickening clarity, that whatever this presence was, it had already learned to inhabit me. I could feel it under my skin, in my bones, in my thoughts. It was no longer just a shadow, no longer just a laptop, it was part of me. I tried to fight it, tried to close the laptop, tried to throw it across the room, but my hands moved in opposition to my will, forced by something else, something that wanted me to watch. On the screen, my apartment played back in real time, movements I had not made, actions I had not taken, choices I had not decided, a panel displayed with terrifying precision, and the shadow always followed, crouched, patient, smiling. I realized with horror that this presence wasn't just watching my life anymore, it was rewriting it. I sank to the floor, trembling, feeling the coldness seep into my very bones. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me, pressing into my mind. The reflection on the screen began to move on its own, turning to face me fully. It smiled, leaned forward, and whispered my name not through my ears, but directly into my thoughts. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, could barely breathe. The line between myself and whatever was in the screen blurred. I felt my identity slipping, dissolving, as though I were becoming just another reflection, another puppet in its gallery. Then I saw it, something impossible, terrifying. My own hands were typing on the laptop, moving without my consent, spelling words I had never learned to write. Join me. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I tried to resist, tried to scream, but the presence inside me had control now. It whispered promises I could not resist. Safety, release, a way to escape the terror, but at a cost I could not comprehend. And then I understood with absolute clarity there was no escape. Not from it, not from the laptop, not from myself. The glow of the screen intensified, filling the room, illuminating shadows that had no source, shapes that did not belong to the world. My reflection leaned closer, the shadow behind it merging into me. I felt a pull, as if the screen itself had opened into my mind, my body, my soul. I tried to fight, tried to run, tried to close my eyes, but the moment I did, the whispers found me in the dark. When I opened them again, I was staring at my own reflection, but it was no longer just me. The shadow crouched in the corner of the screen, smiling wider than it ever had, and I realized I wasn't looking at myself, I was looking at what I had become. The laptop sat open, typing on its own, spelling a single line across the screen. I'm watching you, always. And then it went black, but I knew it had not left. I could still feel it inside me, patient, hungry, waiting for the next person, curious enough to click, to open, to let it in. Somewhere beyond the screen it was watching, learning, ready to consume again. And as I stared into the darkness of my apartment, I understood the truth of what had happened. I was not trapped in the apartment, I was trapped in the laptop, and it was still alive.